A woman walking alone but not lonely. Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that might surprise you or maybe even challenge everything you thought you knew about relationships, friendship, and what it truly means to live a fulfilled life. Imagine this, a woman walking alone down a bustling city street. Her steps are deliberate, her gaze steady, her energy calm yet unshakable. She's not surrounded by friends or followers. No one is tagging along for companionship. At first glance, society would label her as lonely, isolated, perhaps even broken. But let me tell you something, they couldn't be more wrong. This isn't just some abstract idea we're discussing today. This is real. This is her story, the story of women like Jessica Opare, who have chosen solitude over toxicity, authenticity over approval, and self-respect over social validation. These women aren't victims of circumstance, they're architects of their own peace. They've learned to walk through life with intention, grace, and quiet power, and in doing so, they've uncovered something most people spend their entire lives searching for: themselves. But here's the thing, there's a common misconception in our world that being alone equals loneliness. That if a woman doesn't have a crowd around her, she must be unhappy, incomplete, or somehow failing at life. And especially when it comes to women, oh, how society loves to judge us. From a young age, we're taught that our worth is tied to our relationships. How many friends do you have? How well do you fit in? Are you socially accepted? These questions become the measuring stick for success, happiness, and value. So when someone like Jessica walks into a room, or better yet, chooses to stay out of it entirely, people start whispering. She must be lonely, they say. Something must be wrong with her. But guess what? Nothing is wrong with her. In fact, she's thriving. Because solitude and loneliness are two very different things. Loneliness is the ache of feeling disconnected, even in a room full of people. It's the pain of not being seen, not being understood, not being valued for who you truly are. Solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious choice, a sacred space where clarity, confidence, and self-awareness bloom. Solitude is freedom. And Jessica, well, she's mastered it. Now, before we dive deeper into why women like Jessica choose this path and how they transform isolation into empowerment, I want you to pause for a moment. Think about your own life. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by the noise of constant connection? Have you ever wondered if all those friendships, likes, and followers are really adding meaning to your existence? If so, then stick around, because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about relationships, happiness, and the kind of life you want to build for yourself. Let's begin by unpacking the myth that surrounds solitude, that pervasive belief that being alone automatically equates to sadness or failure. Society thrives on appearances, doesn't it? We're bombarded with images of celebrities surrounded by entourages, influencers posing with their squad goals, and endless reminders that popularity equals happiness. But here's the truth. None of these external markers can guarantee fulfillment. Not one. And women like Jessica Opare know this better than anyone. Jessica didn't wake up one day and decide to cut herself off from the world out of spite or bitterness. No, this was a journey, a deeply personal, often painful process of stripping away the layers of expectation, obligation, and superficiality that had weighed her down for years. You see, Jessica used to be the kind of woman who gave endlessly, her time, her energy, her trust. She showed up for people who never showed up for her. She kept secrets for those who gossiped behind her back. She supported friends who disappeared the moment she needed them most. Does any of this sound familiar? For a long time, Jessica believed that being liked by everyone meant she was doing something right. She confused attention for affection, company for care. But somewhere along the line, she realized that she was losing pieces of herself in the process. She was trying so hard to fit in, to please others, to keep the peace, that she forgot what it felt like to simply breathe, to exist without apology, to stand firmly in her own truth, even if it meant standing alone. And so she began the slow, courageous work of healing. Healing isn't glamorous, by the way. It doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't come with a spotlight. For Jessica, healing looked like late nights spent reflecting on her past, mornings where she forced herself to choose peace over people-pleasing, and countless moments where she said no, even when it made her seem distant or unapproachable. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was excruciating at times. But every step she took brought her closer to reclaiming her power. One of the most profound lessons Jessica learned during this time was the importance of boundaries. Now, boundaries aren't barriers, they're shields. They're acts of self-love designed to protect your energy and preserve your peace. Jessica stopped entertaining half-hearted friendships, ones built on convenience rather than genuine care. She stopped forcing conversations, fitting into cliques, or pretending to enjoy relationships that felt shallow or one-sided. Instead, she started asking herself difficult but necessary questions. Who actually knows me? Who supports me without conditions? Who truly listens when I speak? When the answers were few or non-existent, she let go. Letting go didn't mean failure. It meant clarity. It meant recognizing that she no longer needed dozens of people around her just to feel seen. What she needed and now seeks is depth. Depth looks like someone who remembers the little things, someone who shows up when it's inconvenient, someone who celebrates her quietly, not just publicly. Those kinds of connections don't come in bulk. They're rare, slow-forming, and rooted in mutual understanding. Choosing quality over quantity also means being willing to sit in silence for a while. Jessica understands that it's better to share a quiet moment with someone who truly gets her than to laugh loudly with people who don't really care. She's not interested in being liked by everyone. She's interested in being loved by the right few. This mindset shift is powerful. It turns loneliness into intentional solitude, transforms isolation into discernment, and allows her to build a life surrounded eventually by people who matter, people who add value, and people who align with who she truly is, not who she's expected to be. Of course, this journey hasn't been without its challenges. Society tends to misunderstand women like Jessica. They call her cold, difficult, antisocial, or bitter. But in reality, she may be one of the strongest individuals you'll ever meet. Why? Because it takes immense courage to stand apart when the world pushes conformity. It takes real power to break away from the crowd and choose authenticity over acceptance. She doesn't move with the herd, not because she can't, but because she refuses to lose herself in it. Her strength is quieter, subtler, but no less impactful. It's the strength of self-restraint when provoked. It's the strength of silence when she could have spoken out in anger. It's the strength of detachment, of walking away from places and people that no longer serve her. It's the strength of rebuilding herself from the inside out without needing a spotlight to prove she's doing just fine. Jessica processes her emotions in private, protects her energy fiercely, and guards her growth with intention. She's weathered storms in silence, becoming her own source of comfort, motivation, and protection. What many fail to see is that her solitude forces others to confront their own discomfort with being alone. Her self-sufficiency disrupts the narrative that a woman's value lies in her relationships, her role as a nurturer, or her social status. But here's the beautiful part. Her strength isn't cold, it's warm, just fiercely guarded. She's not pushing people away. She's refusing to shrink herself to make others comfortable. Her strength doesn't scream at whispers. It shows up in boundaries and the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're enough with or without company. Behind every woman who keeps her distance, who sits quietly in the back, who doesn't reach out or join in, there is usually a story. Not always loud or dramatic, but deeply personal. For Jessica, that story is one of healing, rebuilding, and learning the high cost of letting just anyone too close. Somewhere along the way, she realized that being open doesn't mean being vulnerable to everyone. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're acts of self-love. Perhaps she once said yes out of guilt, kept quiet to avoid conflict, or gave too much just to be accepted. Maybe she mistook attention for affection or company for care, and perhaps that left her feeling invisible, even when surrounded by people. A strange kind of loneliness can creep in not from being alone, but from not being understood while in the presence of others. So she changed. She began the slow, often painful process of healing. Not the kind that's linear or glamorous, but the kind that happens in silence. In the late nights spent reflecting. In the mornings where she chose peace over people-pleasing. In the moments where she said no, even when it made her seem distant. Through healing, she developed boundaries not to push people away, but to create space for those who truly value her presence. These boundaries aren't meant to keep the world out, but to protect her from repeating patterns that once made her feel small. She no longer entertains energy that leaves her depleted. She no longer sacrifices her well-being just to keep someone else comfortable. These boundaries come from wisdom, not bitterness. They're the result of knowing what it took to survive, what it costs to recover, and what it means to truly protect your peace. Jessica's healing journey has rewired the way she interacts with the world. She isn't afraid to be alone because she knows what it's like to feel alone around the wrong people, and she'll never go back to that again. When she draws a line, it's not rejection, it's self-preservation. When she chooses silence, it's not indifference, it's discernment. And when she keeps her circle small or empty, it's not because she doesn't value others, it's because she finally values herself enough to be intentional with who she lets in. When people see a woman like Jessica, often alone, without a visible social circle, quietly moving through life without the background noise of friendship groups or constant companionship, their knee-jerk reaction is often pity. They assume she's lonely, maybe even broken or somehow incomplete. They view her solitude as a flaw, something to be fixed. But what if, instead of pity, what she deserves is respect? What if her life, the way she carries herself, the way she chooses herself, is not something to mourn, but something to admire? There's a quiet defiance in a woman who chooses to walk through the world without clinging to others for identity or self-worth. a kind of rebellion against a culture that defines women by their roles in relationships as friends, lovers, supporters, caretakers. This woman defies the expectation that she must always be giving, socializing, accommodating. She reclaims her time, her voice, her presence. And that's not sad, it's inspiring. She teaches us that strength isn't always loud, that healing doesn't always need an audience, that self-respect sometimes means standing alone. Rather than shrinking to be accepted by the crowd, she shows that validation doesn't need to come from applause or inclusion, it can come from within. And that kind of self-possession, it's rare, bold, and beautiful. The world often overlooks the lessons a woman like this can offer. She reminds us to evaluate the relationships we maintain. Are they meaningful or just familiar? Are they nurturing us or just filling space? She challenges the idea that busy social calendars equal happiness and instead invites us to think about presence, intention, and emotional authenticity. This woman is proof that solitude can be empowering, that silence can be wise, that space can be sacred. She's not trying to prove anything to anyone. She's not performing for the world. She's simply living on her own terms, guided by her own truth. That in itself is a radical act of self-love in a world that constantly tells women to seek approval, stay connected at all costs, and keep smiling even when their hearts are heavy. To pity her is to misunderstand her. To assume she's missing out is to overlook what she's gained: peace, clarity, autonomy, and the profound realization that her value is not determined by how many people surround her, but by how deeply she knows and honors herself. She doesn't want attention, she wants authenticity. She doesn't crave popularity, she craves peace. And in a society that fears loneliness, she's found something even more powerful: freedom. She may walk alone, yes, but not in sadness, not in defeat. She walks with intention, grace, and quiet power. That's not a woman to feel sorry for. That's a woman to learn from. So here's my question to you. Are you ready to redefine what it means to live a meaningful, fulfilling life? Are you ready to step away from the noise, the expectations, and the pressures of society and start listening to your own voice? If Jessica's story resonates with you, if you've ever felt drained by toxic relationships, misunderstood by the crowd, or weighed down by the need for approval, then it's time to take action. I want you to reflect on your own life. Who are the people in your circle? Do they lift you up or do they drain you? Are you holding on to friendships out of obligation, or are they truly adding value to your life? Be honest with yourself. Start setting boundaries. Say no when it feels right. Protect your energy like it's the most precious resource you have, because it is. And remember, solitude isn't something to fear. It's a sanctuary. It's where you'll find the answers you've been looking for, the clarity you've been craving, and the strength you didn't know you had. So whether you're walking alone or surrounded by a select few, make sure every step you take is intentional, every relationship you nurture is authentic, and every decision you make honors the incredible person you are. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comments below. Have you ever chosen solitude over toxicity? What did you learn about yourself in the process? Let's create a community of women and men who are committed to living authentically, unapologetically, and fully alive. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, you don't need a crowd to validate your worth. All you need is the courage to listen to your own voice and the wisdom to honor your truth. Until next time, walk boldly, live freely, and embrace the power of your own path.